Welcome to Famous People, English Stories. Ready to level up your English? Here we learn through stories slow, clear, and fun. Listen, relax, and enjoy the journey.
Introduction. Today, we'll follow the story of a young woman named Alina. She struggled with confidence and speaking English but discovered how to think smart and speak fluent by finding her own voice. Join us as we explore her challenges, her growth, and how she inspired others to do the same. Let's begin. Chapter 1: The Whisper in the Library. Once upon a time, in a small city filled with noise, neon lights, and busy people, there lived a young woman named Alina. She was 24, quiet, thoughtful, and always curious. Every morning, she walked to the city library with a notebook in one hand and a dream in her heart. Her dream? To speak English fluently and think clearly, smartly, in any situation. But dreams aren't easy. Alina had studied English for years. She memorized words. She filled notebooks. She watched videos. She even talked to herself in the mirror. But when someone spoke to her in real life, her mind froze. Words flew away like birds in a storm. She couldn't respond, and her confidence shattered. "I know the words," she whispered to herself. "Why can't I say them?" One rainy afternoon, as she sat near the window of the library, she noticed an old woman reading a thick, dusty book. The woman wore round glasses, a long gray scarf, and had a calm, powerful presence. Something about her felt different, like she held a secret. Alina leaned a little closer. The old woman looked up, smiled kindly, and said in perfect English, "You're trying too hard to speak, but you're not training your mind to think." Alina blinked. "I'm sorry?" "You think in fear," the woman said. "You fear mistakes. You fear silence. But if you train your mind to think smart, the words will follow. Like music follows rhythm." Alina stared at her. "How?" The woman closed her book and handed it to her. It wasn't a grammar book. It was a storybook with short, simple stories in English. But each one had a twist, a deeper lesson hidden inside. "This is how I learned," she said. "Read slowly. Out loud. Understand the story. Think about the message. Don't just study English, feel it. Live it." That night, Alina read the first story aloud in her small room. Her voice trembled at first, but she kept going. She didn't stop to check every word. She focused on the meaning, the feeling. And something magical happened. She began to enjoy it. Each day, she read one story. Then she told the story again, in her own words. She didn't memorize. She created. Slowly, her sentences grew. Her confidence returned. She began to think in English, not with fear, but with clarity. At the library, the old woman smiled as she listened to Alina speak. "You're not just learning English," she said. "You're learning how to think." One afternoon, Alina saw a group of tourists lost near the metro station. They looked worried, holding a map upside down. Normally, she would have walked away. But not this time. She walked up, smiled, and said, "Hi. Do you need help finding something?" The tourists lit up. "Yes. We're trying to get to the art museum." Alina smiled, pointed, and gave directions, clearly, calmly, fluently. When they thanked her, something in her heart shifted. She didn't just speak English. She used it. She helped someone. She connected. That night, Alina wrote in her journal. Fluency isn't just about words. It's about thinking smart. Speaking is easy when you're not scared to think. She closed her journal and smiled. Her journey had just begun. Chapter 2: The Confidence Cafe. A week after helping the tourists, Alina walked with a new rhythm in her step. She no longer avoided eye contact with strangers. She no longer hid her voice behind silence. Something was changing inside her, not just her language, but her confidence. Still, she knew fluency wasn't a destination. It was a journey. One bright Saturday, Alina decided to try something new. She visited a cafe known for hosting English-only conversation meetups. The place was called the Confidence Cafe. It was a warm, friendly corner cafe with books on the walls and laughter in the air. A small chalkboard sign read, "Speak to learn. Learn to speak. Mistakes welcome." Alina took a deep breath and stepped inside. A woman with curly hair and a wide smile greeted her. "Hey there. First time?" "Yes," Alina said nervously. "I'm Alina." "I'm Grace." "Don't worry. We're all learners here. We speak slowly, we help each other, and we don't apologize for our accents." That made Alina smile. She joined a group of 5 people sitting around a wooden table, each with a cup of coffee and a story to tell. One man was from Brazil, another from Japan, a woman from Egypt, and a student from Korea. Different countries, different languages, but one shared goal: to speak English with confidence. The topic of the day was simple: talk about a mistake that taught you something. Alina hesitated. Her palms were sweaty. Her heart beat fast. But then she remembered what the old woman said: think smart. Don't fear silence. She took a sip of tea, then spoke. "I once forgot the word kitchen and called it food room. Everyone laughed, including her. But now I never forget it. I learned that mistakes are bridges to better memory." The group nodded, smiled, and shared their own funny mistakes. Grace clapped her hands. "That's the spirit. We don't fear mistakes, we use them. That's smart thinking." For the next hour, Alina listened, responded, and laughed. She realized something important: conversation is not about perfect grammar. It's about connection. It's about listening, pausing, responding, not reacting in panic. Later, Grace sat beside her. "You know, the smartest speakers aren't the fastest ones," she said. "They're the ones who listen, think clearly, and respond with meaning." Alina nodded. "That's what I want. Not fast. Just clear, calm, and real." "You're already doing it," Grace smiled. "You just don't see it yet." That night, Alina couldn't sleep. Her mind was full of thoughts, not in her native language, but in English. Phrases from the cafe echoed in her head. She didn't translate anymore. She just understood. She remembered the look on the tourists' faces, the laughter at the cafe, and Grace's words. She opened her notebook and wrote, "Think smart. Speak slow. Mistakes are messages. Fluency is not perfection, it's connection." The next morning, she did something bold. She recorded herself speaking. "Hi, my name is Alina. I used to be afraid of speaking English. Not anymore. Now, I speak with heart, not just with grammar. She watched it. Was it perfect? No. Was it powerful? Yes. She uploaded it to a language learning group online. A few hours later, messages started coming in. You inspire me. Wow, I feel the same way. Thank you for sharing your journey. Alina smiled through tears. Her voice mattered, not because it was flawless, but because it was honest. That day, she understood the real secret. Fluent speaking isn't about sounding like a native. It's about thinking like a communicator. She closed her notebook and whispered, "This is just the beginning." Chapter 3: The Spotlight Challenge. The sun rose gently over the city as Alina opened her eyes. A quiet breeze slipped through the window, carrying the sound of birds and a sense of something new. She didn't know it yet, but today would change her forever. At the Confidence Cafe, Grace had a surprise. "Alina," she said with a grin, "next weekend we're hosting something special, a Speak Smart Challenge. It's a mini event. Everyone gets 3 minutes to tell a story, in English, to a small audience." Alina froze. Her heartbeat quickened. A story? In front of people? Yes. You choose the topic. Something simple, something real. Speak slowly, think clearly. No pressure. Just connection. Alina nodded slowly. The old fear returned. Her mind whispered all the usual doubts. What if I freeze? What if I forget the words? What if they laugh? But another voice inside her answered, "You've grown. You've trained your mind. You don't need perfect. You need presence." That night, Alina sat at her desk with her favorite pen and a blank page. She thought about what story to tell. Should she talk about learning English? Or the tourists she helped? Or the first time she called the kitchen a food room? No. She wanted to tell a story that was small but powerful. She remembered her grandmother's garden. Every summer, Alina helped plant seeds and water the flowers. One day, her grandmother said something she never forgot. Flowers grow slowly, but they grow strong. Be like a flower. Alina smiled. That was her story. The next few days were filled with preparation. She wrote her speech, practiced it in front of the mirror, then recorded it and listened again. She didn't try to sound perfect. She focused on clarity, emotion, and meaning. She even practiced breathing. One slow breath before each sentence. One calm pause after each idea. Smart thinking in action. Finally, the day arrived. The Confidence Cafe was full of friendly faces. The lights were warm, not harsh. The stage was small, but to Alina, it felt big. Grace introduced her gently. Our next speaker is someone who's grown beautifully in her journey. Please welcome Alina. As she stepped forward, Alina felt a tremble in her hands. Her palms were cold. But her voice was steady. She smiled at the audience and began. When I was little, I helped my grandmother in her garden. I was too young to understand how things grew. I wanted fast results. I watered the same flower 5 times a day. I even tried to talk to it, hoping it would bloom. The crowd chuckled softly. One day, I asked her, "Why is it taking so long?" She said, "Because it's growing right. Not fast, but strong. And one day, you'll see the beauty." She paused, took a breath. I think learning English is the same. In the beginning, I wanted fast fluency. I memorized, I panicked, I gave up. But nothing worked until I slowed down. I began to think smarter. I stopped fearing mistakes. I started to enjoy the language. Alina looked up. The room was quiet, listening. Fluency isn't a race. It's a garden. You plant words. You water them with practice. You give them sunshine, your confidence, your mistakes, your stories. And slowly, you bloom. A gentle silence followed. Then, applause. Real applause. Grace met her with a hug. "That," she whispered, "was the most fluent thing I've heard today." Alina laughed, tears in her eyes. "Really? Fluency is not about speed. It's about truth. You spoke with heart. That's smart speaking." That night, Alina walked home under a sky full of stars. She didn't rush. She didn't replay her mistakes. She felt free, proud, and present. At her desk, she opened her notebook and wrote one final thought. "My voice is not perfect. But it is mine. And that makes it powerful." Then she closed the notebook and smiled. Because this chapter may have ended, but her journey was just beginning. Chapter 4: The Mirror and the Mentor. Weeks passed after the Speak Smart challenge, but the memory of that night still glowed inside Alina like a warm candle. She walked differently now, not because her English was perfect, but because her mindset had changed. She had learned to think smart. And now, she spoke with purpose. One day, as she arrived early at the Confidence Cafe, she saw someone sitting alone at a corner table. A young girl, no older than 16, with nervous eyes and a notebook clutched to her chest. Alina smiled and approached gently. "Hi. First time here?" The girl nodded slowly. "Yes. I'm Daria. I'm learning English. But I don't talk much. I'm scared. I feel stupid sometimes." Alina sat down. Her voice was calm and kind. "You're not stupid. You're just a beginner. Like we all were." Daria looked down at her notebook. "I know words. I can read and write. But when I speak, my mind goes blank. I panic. Then I make mistakes, and I stop talking." Alina took a deep breath. She saw her old self in Daria, the silence, the fear, the belief that speaking had to be fast or perfect. She leaned in. "Can I tell you something I wish someone told me earlier?" Daria looked up, curious. "You don't have to be fast. You have to be clear. And you don't have to be perfect. You have to be real. Mistakes don't make you weak. They make you brave." The girl blinked, and a small smile broke through her nerves. "Really?" Alina nodded. "I used to say food room instead of kitchen. And now I never forget that word. Every mistake is a teacher." Daria laughed softly. They began meeting twice a week. At first, just for 10 minutes of conversation. Then longer. Alina showed Daria how to slow down, how to breathe, how to listen before speaking. She shared her notebook tricks, word maps, sentence starters, mini stories. But more than that, she gave her something rare and powerful: patience. One afternoon, Grace noticed them from across the cafe. She walked over and placed 2 cups of tea in front of them. "You're doing something beautiful, Alina," she said. "You've become a mentor." Alina blushed. "I'm just sharing what helped me." "Exactly. And that's leadership." Daria looked at Alina with admiration. "You speak like a native now." Alina shook her head gently. "No, I speak like myself." "That's even better." That weekend, Grace invited Daria to try the next Speak Smart challenge. The theme? A lesson I learned through language. Daria hesitated. "I don't think I'm ready." Alina smiled. "You don't have to be ready. You just have to be real." Daria stood in front of a small crowd, her hands shaking slightly. But her voice? Clear. Honest. "I used to think fluency meant speed. But now I know it means confidence. My mentor told me that mistakes are bridges. And now, I'm not afraid to cross them." The room clapped, and Alina clapped the loudest. Her eyes were bright with pride. After the event, Grace walked over. "You didn't just learn fluency, Alina. You passed it on. That's the smartest thinking of all." That night, Alina walked home feeling light as air. The city lights reflected in the windows, and her reflection reminded her of how far she had come, not just in speaking, but in thinking, in being, in believing. She sat by the window and opened her old notebook. On the last page, she wrote, "To speak well, think smart. To think smart, believe in growth. To grow, help someone bloom." She closed the book, took a deep breath, and whispered to the stars, "This is no longer just my journey. It's our journey." Chapter 5: Speak Calm in the Storm. It was a rainy Saturday when Alina boarded the metro. She had plans to meet an old friend at the art museum across town. Her umbrella dripped quietly onto the floor, and soft music hummed through her headphones. She didn't know yet, but the journey ahead would test everything she had learned. A few stops later, the train slowed to a crawl, then stopped. The lights flickered. People looked around. Then the voice of the train conductor came on the intercom, rushed, uncertain, and in rapid French. Alina caught only fragments: technical problem, waiting, emergency assistance. Murmurs filled the carriage. A child began to cry. An elderly woman looked confused. A young tourist couple stood frozen, holding a city map and looking completely lost. Alina removed her headphones and stood up. Her heart pounded, but her mind stayed clear. She took a deep breath and stepped forward. "Excuse me," she said gently to the couple. "Do you need help?" "Yes," the man replied. "We don't understand what's going on. We don't speak French, just English. We're here on vacation." Alina smiled warmly. "It's okay. I understand both. There's a technical problem. They've called for help. We just need to wait. No danger, just delay." The woman exhaled in relief. "Thank you. We were panicking. You speak English so well." "I speak slowly," Alina replied with a smile. "That helps." She turned toward the elderly woman who still looked lost. Alina walked over and gently explained the situation in both English and simple French, speaking slowly, with empathy. The woman nodded and smiled, clearly comforted. The child who had been crying was sitting with his mother. Alina knelt down beside them. "Hi there," she said softly, smiling at the little boy. "Do you want to see a magic trick?" She pulled a small coin from her pocket and made it disappear into her sleeve. The boy giggled. His mother mouthed, "Thank you." Bit by bit, the train car transformed. Fear faded into calm. Alina had not shouted. She had not used fancy words. She had simply stayed present. After 20 minutes, the train started moving again. A light round of applause broke out, not for the train, but for Alina. The tourist couple turned to her. "You should be a guide. Or a leader. Or something," the man said. Alina laughed. "I'm just someone who used to be afraid to speak." When she finally reached the museum, her friend Mira greeted her with a hug. "You're late," Mira teased. "What happened?" Alina told the story. Not with drama, but with clarity and grace. Mira listened, wide-eyed. "You did all that? That's incredible." "No," Alina said, smiling. "It's what fluency is for. Not showing off, showing up." That evening, back home, Alina opened her new journal. She titled the page, "Crisis Teaches Confidence." She wrote, "Real fluency is calm in the storm. Not perfect grammar, but perfect presence. Not fast speech, but thoughtful words. Today, I learned that speaking smart means listening first, helping next, and trusting myself even when it's raining." Then she paused and added a second line. "Fear used to be the loudest voice in my head. Now, it's wisdom." She closed the journal and smiled. She no longer feared silence. Because now, she knew how to fill it, with understanding, with courage, and with a voice that had grown not just fluent, but strong. Chapter 6: The Voice Beyond the Room. It began with an email. One quiet morning, Alina opened her inbox and saw a message with the subject line, "Invitation to Speak, the Global Learners Summit." She blinked twice. Inside, the message read, "Dear Alina, we've heard about your incredible journey, how you turned fear into fluency and now help others do the same. We'd love to invite you to be a guest speaker at our online summit, attended by thousands of English learners around the world. Your story matters. Your voice inspires. Will you join us?" Alina stared at the screen. Her hand hovered over the keyboard. That old voice, the one that whispered, "Are you sure you're good enough?" tried to return. But another voice spoke louder now. It said, "You are ready." She typed back, "Yes. I'd be honored." The next weeks flew by. She spent her evenings at her favorite table in the Confidence Cafe, preparing her talk. Not to impress. Not to show off. But to share. The night before the summit, Grace sat across from her. "Excited?" Grace asked. Alina nodded slowly. "And a little scared." Grace smiled. "That's perfect. If you weren't a little scared, it wouldn't be real." Alina laughed. "I just want to reach people. Help them believe. You already do, Grace replied. But tomorrow, you'll do it on a global stage. The next day, Alina sat in front of her laptop. Her heart thudded as the screen counted down. 3, 2, 1. Live. Thousands of faces filled the screen, students from Brazil, Japan, Egypt, Ukraine, India, Mexico. A sea of learners, just like she once was. Alina smiled. Hello everyone. My name is Alina. I'm not a teacher. I'm not an actor. I'm not even a native speaker. I'm just someone who used to freeze every time someone said, "Tell me about yourself." But today, I want to tell you something simple. You do not have to be fluent to be confident. You just have to believe that your words matter. She told them her story. The girl with the shaking hands and the silent voice. The notebook full of fears. The cafe that became her training ground. The mentor who helped her find her rhythm. She shared the day she translated for strangers on a broken train. The moment she saw herself not as a student, but as a guide. You don't need perfect grammar, she said. You need brave sentences. You don't need a huge vocabulary. You need real words from your heart. She paused, then looked into the camera and said, "The smartest thinking is believing that your small steps are enough. The most fluent speaking is when your voice matches your truth." In the chat, messages poured in. Thank you, Alina. I cried listening to this. Now I believe I can speak too. After the session ended, Alina closed her laptop. Tears rolled down her cheeks, not from nerves, but from joy. Not long after, she received another message. Alina, we'd love to feature your story in our International Learner magazine. Alina, can we translate your speech for students in Africa? Alina, can you record a podcast episode with us? The girl who once hid behind quiet walls had become a voice for millions. That evening, she met Grace at the cafe. They clinked their mugs together. To brave voices, Grace said. Alina raised her cup. And clear minds. That night, as she walked home, Alina looked up at the city lights. Once, they felt like stars she could never reach. Now, they felt like mirrors, reflecting just how far her voice had traveled. She whispered into the air. This was never just about English. It was about courage. About growth. About becoming more than I ever believed I could be. And somewhere, in a quiet room across the world, a learner pressed play on her video and smiled. Because Alina's voice, slow, clear, and kind, had just reached them. Chapter 7. From One Voice to Many. A few weeks had passed since the summit. Alina's inbox had become a river of gratitude. Hundreds of messages arrived each day. I watched your speech with my daughter. She's now speaking more at school. I play your story every morning. It gives me hope. Can you create more videos? You make English feel real and human. She read each one with a full heart. Something inside her had shifted. This wasn't just her journey anymore. It belonged to others too. That evening, she returned to the Confidence Cafe with a new notebook. On the cover, she wrote in bold letters, "The Voice Project." Below it, one sentence. Help others believe their voice matters. She began planning. Not for a stage. Not for applause. But for people who were where she once was, lost in translation, stuck in silence, afraid of being judged. Her idea was simple, a YouTube channel. But not a flashy one. No grammar charts. No heavy textbooks. Just stories. Real stories. About fear, progress, failure, and tiny wins. She would call it, Think Smart. Speak Brave. Her first video was raw. She filmed it in her small room, sitting by the window with soft light behind her. "Hi, my name is Alina," she began. "If you're afraid to speak English, you're not alone. This channel is a space where we grow together, not through pressure, but through peace." She told them how she once avoided eye contact, how she used to rehearse answers in her head but never say them out loud, how a stranger's kindness and a cafe changed everything. She ended with this: "Fluency is not about fast words. It's about real words. Honest words. Your words." Then she clicked upload. At first, only a few people watched. Then a few more. Then hundreds. Then thousands. Comments flowed in like gentle waves. "You speak to my soul. Your voice calms me." Finally, someone who understands how hard it is. Alina kept going. Week by week, she shared more stories. A boy who overcame his stutter. A refugee woman learning English to open her bakery. A taxi driver practicing with passengers. A mother teaching herself at night to help her children. And slowly, the channel grew, not just in views, but in community. People from 80+ countries began sending their own stories. They weren't perfect. Some had grammar mistakes. But they were powerful. So Alina started a new segment, Brave Voices. She would read their letters, slowly and clearly, honoring every word. "Today's story comes from Fatima in Morocco," she'd say. She wrote, "I was always afraid to speak. But now, I say one sentence a day in English. I feel proud." Her voice cracked as she read. This was not just education. This was healing. One afternoon, she received a message from a school in Brazil. "Dear Alina, we play your stories every morning. Our students start their day believing they can grow. You've become part of our classroom. Thank you." She read it 3 times. Tears slipped down her cheeks. She remembered the girl she used to be, the one who hid in the back of class, praying no one would call her name. And now, classrooms called her voice. That night, she walked through the city. The streets buzzed with life. She passed the metro station where she once translated during a crisis. She passed the cafe where she found her first courage. She stood on a bridge and whispered into the night air. "I thought I had to speak perfectly. But now I know. I just had to speak honestly." Behind her, the city lights sparkled. In front of her, the future glowed brighter than ever. She took out her notebook and wrote, "The smartest thing I ever did was stop waiting for confidence. The bravest thing I ever did was speak anyway." And across the world, another young woman pressed play on Alina's video, her voice shaking, her eyes wide, her hope rising. Because one brave voice had opened the door for 1,000 more. Chapter 8: The Power of Everyday Speech. Alina was sitting at her kitchen table when the letter arrived. Not an email. Not a message. A real, printed letter. She held it in her hands, the envelope stamped with the seal of an international education summit held in Geneva, Switzerland. She opened it carefully, her breath caught in her throat. Dear Alina, we are honored to invite you as a keynote speaker for the World Forum on Language Learning and Global Communication. Your journey has inspired thousands. Your voice represents courage, clarity, and connection. We believe you have something important to say, not just about learning English, but about finding power in everyday speech. We hope you'll join us. She sat there, stunned. Her small channel, her quiet voice, her soft-spoken story, it had somehow reached the ears of the world's leading thinkers in education. She looked up at the wall where she'd pinned her favorite quote. Speak as though someone is listening who needs your voice to survive today. Alina packed her bags days later. On the plane to Switzerland, she stared out the window, remembering the train in the storm, the whispers of doubt, the day she almost gave up. But now, she was flying toward something greater. The summit was held in a grand hall filled with experts, professors, researchers, and policymakers from every continent. Flags lined the room. Cameras recorded every word. But Alina didn't feel small. She felt ready. When she took the stage, a hush fell over the audience. She stood in her simple dress, no slides, no stats, just her voice and her truth. Good morning, she began, calmly. My name is Alina. I'm not here as an expert. I'm not here as a linguist. I'm here as someone who was once silent. She paused. There is something powerful in everyday speech. The words we say to our friends. The stories we share when we're scared. The questions we dare to ask when we don't know the answer. She told them about the cafe where she practiced her first real sentences. About grace. About the learners who wrote to her from faraway villages, factories, and bedrooms late at night. You don't need to be perfect to connect. You need to be present, she said. You don't need to speak like a native. You need to speak like a human. Applause rippled through the room. She ended with this. If we can help one person say, I believe in myself, then we are teaching fluency at the highest level. Not just in language, but in life. When she stepped down, people stood. Not just for her words, but for her heart. After the summit, something extraordinary happened. She wasn't just being invited to speak. She was being asked to create. Educational platforms wanted her to design modules on confidence. NGOs asked her to mentor refugee learners. A documentary team offered to film her journey. But her favorite message came from a tiny school in a village in India. Dear Alina, we play your videos on a shared phone with 12 students under a tree. One girl used to never talk. Now, she teaches new words to the others. She says, if Alina can speak, so can I. That night, Alina stood by the hotel window in Geneva. The city lights sparkled like stars. She whispered, almost to herself. Fluency is not volume. It's value. Back home, she launched a new series on her channel, From Silence to Speech. Each episode featured voices from around the world, everyday people, brave learners, those who had doubted and dared anyway. She also created a free online toolkit, short lessons, journaling prompts, and daily speaking challenges, not based on tests, but based on trust. And then she did something bold. She released a book. A storybook. Not just about grammar or speaking tips, but filled with real letters, her own journal pages, and tiny lessons in courage. Its title? Think Smart. Speak Brave. Exactly like her channel. The book became a quiet sensation. Not because it was perfect, but because it was honest. Reviewers said, Alina teaches not just how to speak English, but how to speak without fear. In the final chapter, she wrote, To anyone reading this, you are not behind. You are not broken. You are not alone. Your voice matters. Let the world hear it. And on the last page, one sentence stood alone. Fluency begins the moment you stop hiding. Chapter 9, The Voice That Echoes On. Alina stepped off the train with a small backpack and a warm coat. She had returned home. Not to her old city apartment or the quiet corners of cafes, but to the very town where her story began. The same sleepy station. The same gray skies. But this time, something was different. She was no longer the quiet girl watching the world pass by. She was the woman who had helped the world start speaking. And now, she had come back with a purpose. It started with a message from her old school, an invitation to speak to the students. At first, she hesitated. What could she say that would really matter? Then she remembered the girl she used to be, sitting in the last row, afraid to raise her hand. That girl deserved someone who believed in her. So Alina said yes. The school hadn't changed much, cracked floors, faded posters, voices echoing through thin hallways. But in one classroom sat a girl who would change everything. Her name was Tara. Tara sat in silence, her eyes always down, her notebook filled with drawings rather than words. When asked to speak, she froze. Not because she didn't know the answer, but because she didn't believe she was allowed to be heard. Alina noticed her right away. It was like looking into a mirror of her younger self. After her talk to the class, where she shared stories of fear, failure, and finally finding her voice, Tara approached her shyly after the bell rang. Miss Alina, she said softly, do you think I could ever speak like you? Alina didn't answer immediately. She sat beside Tara on the bench outside and looked up at the cloudy sky. I don't want you to speak like me, she said. I want you to speak like you. Tara blinked. But I don't sound smart. I say wrong things. Alina smiled. Do you think birds worry about singing the right notes? They sing because the world needs their song. Tara's eyes lit up just a little. And so began something new. Every week, Alina met with Tara, and later, other students too. They didn't call it class. They called it voice time. Each session, they spoke without judgment. They laughed through mistakes. They wrote silly stories. They practiced breathing before speaking. They even used mirrors to smile and see themselves as speakers. Soon, Tara wasn't just answering questions. She was asking them. And one day, in front of the entire school, Tara gave a short speech. It wasn't perfect. But it was powerful. She ended by saying, I used to hide my words. Now, I share them. The crowd cheered. Some teachers cried. Alina stood at the back, her heart full. Later, Tara gave Alina a handmade bookmark. It had a quote written in her own handwriting. Your voice gave me mine. Word of Alina's voice time spread. A community center offered space. Volunteers joined. Parents came to learn alongside their children. Some students came after long shifts at work. Others walked miles to attend. It wasn't just English they were learning, it was confidence, clarity, and connection. One boy, Raj, gave his first public presentation. One mother, Fatima, asked a question at a doctor's office for the first time. One grandpa, Omar, recorded a bedtime story in English for his grandchildren. Each moment was a victory. And in every session, Alina repeated one phrase. You are not just learning to speak English. You are learning to speak your truth. Soon, voice time became more than a local project. It was shared in videos, mentioned in articles, even adopted by schools in other countries. But Alina's favorite story remained Tara's. Years later, Tara stood on a stage of her own, as a youth mentor, guiding others through their own silent struggles. She opened her speech with these words. Once, I believed smart people were the ones who used big words. Now I know, smart people are the ones who use simple words that reach the heart. I learned that from someone who helped me hear my own voice. The audience stood. And backstage, Alina watched, tears in her eyes. She had once dreamed of fluency. Now, she had planted it in others. Because in the end, smart thinking and fluent speaking are not about showing off. They're about showing up. For yourself. And for others. Chapter 10, A Letter from Afar. It was a quiet Sunday morning. The kind of morning where the world moves slowly, tea steam dancing in the air, birds singing softly outside the window, and the laptop glowing faintly on the desk. Alina sipped her green tea and opened her email. Among the usual messages, meeting reminders, lesson requests, and newsletters, was one with a subject line that simply said, You changed my life. She paused, clicked, and began to read. Dear Alina, I don't know if this message will ever reach you, but I wanted to try. My name is Ahmed. I live in a small town in Morocco. English is not common here. Opportunities are rare. But still, I dreamed. I dreamed of speaking. Not just English, but with confidence. With truth. With meaning. But for many years, my dreams stayed locked inside. Until I found you. Alina's hand covered her mouth. She kept reading. One day, by chance, I found your story on YouTube. You spoke slowly, clearly, like I was right there in the room with you. Not just learning grammar or pronunciation, but learning courage. You said something I never forgot. Fluent is not perfect. Fluent is brave. That line changed everything. I watched every video. I paused, repeated, copied your words. But more than that, I copied your spirit. I made flashcards from your phrases. I practiced in front of a cracked mirror. I whispered words while walking to school. And slowly, very slowly, I changed. Alina smiled, her eyes misty. At first, I could say simple things. Hello. My name is Ahmed. I want to speak English. Then I joined a small online group. We helped each other. We called ourselves the Brave Fluents. That was your influence too. And last week, something incredible happened. I gave a speech, in English, for the first time. in front of my classmates. My voice shook, my hands trembled. But I did it. At the end, I said. I thought I had to be perfect. But now I know, I just have to be me. Alina wiped a tear. So why am I writing this? Because I want you to know, your voice didn't just reach my ears. It reached my heart. You didn't just teach English. You taught us how to believe again. I hope, one day, I can meet you and say thank you in person. But for now, please know this. Every time I speak, a part of your story lives on. With deepest gratitude. Ahmed. Alina leaned back in her chair, her heart full. She had started with a whisper, afraid to speak. She had grown into a teacher, helping others find their voice. And now, even in the quiet of her own home, her words were traveling across oceans, into the hearts of people she'd never met. She opened a new email draft. Typed slowly, carefully. Dear Ahmed. Thank you for your beautiful message. Your words reminded me why I started. You are the story now. Never stop speaking. Never stop dreaming. Because someone out there is listening, learning, and growing, just like you once did. With respect and belief. Alina. She hit send. Then walked to the window. The world looked brighter somehow. Not because of the sun, but because of all the voices rising in it. Voices once hidden. Voices now rising in classrooms, coffee shops, villages, and video calls. Voices not perfect, but powerful. Voices that no longer whispered maybe, but declared I am here. Alina smiled. Because now she knew. The smartest thoughts are the ones shared with honesty. The most fluent words are the ones spoken with heart. And the most beautiful voices are the ones that once believed they had none. Epilogue, 5 years later, voices that changed the world. 5 years had passed since Alina returned to her hometown to start Voice Time. The little project had grown into a global movement. In a bright office in Casablanca, Ahmed was now leading a new program for young learners, inspired by Alina's teachings. His smile was confident, his English fluent but full of warmth. He opened his laptop to prepare a speech for an international conference on language learning. Thousands of miles away, in New York City, Tara stood on a stage at a youth leadership summit. Her voice was strong and clear, sharing her story of silence turned to courage. She encouraged others to find their own voices, just as Alina had helped her. Back in her home city, Alina sat in a cozy studio, recording her latest video lesson. Her channel had millions of subscribers from all over the world. Yet, what she treasured most was the emails, messages, and stories she received daily, reminders of lives changed by simple words spoken bravely. Alina looked around her room filled with letters, photos, and drawings from learners. She smiled, thinking of that shy girl she once was. The journey from silence to speech was not easy. It was filled with doubts, mistakes, and fear. But it was also filled with hope, friendship, and unstoppable courage. As the sun set outside her window, Alina whispered to herself. Thinking smart is not about knowing everything. It's about being curious, open, and kind. Speaking fluent is not about perfection. It's about being brave enough to share your story. And the greatest power of all is to inspire others to do the same. The world was full of voices now. And each one was beautiful in its own way. Because the best stories are not just told, they are lived. If you enjoyed Alina's journey and want to keep improving your English, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more inspiring stories and lessons. Leave a comment below. Tell us about your own English learning journey or which part of Alina's story inspired you the most. Remember, every word you speak brings you closer to fluency. Keep practicing, stay brave, and keep shining your unique voice to the world. See you in the next story.